I created original MySQL a long time ago. I even have a tech talk here in Google about 6-7 years ago. And then it was a small room. And so nowadays, after Sun and because of the uncertainty about MySQL, we decided to create a MariaDB version of MySQL that will be guaranteed always be free, available without commercial features, and we are working very closely with the community to ensure that. In fact, our employees they spend 40% of their time working with customers, 40% with the community, and 20% kind of a free project that they can decide on that is good for the future of the project. And we took actually that idea from Google. And we give how we make our living is that we continue developing MariaDB for customers. We also give support for both MySQL and MariaDB. Okay, let's go to the more interesting things. So what is MariaDB? It's a branch of MySQL with extra features. And we call it a branch instead of a fork because we are 100% compatible with MySQL, so we are dropping replacement, but with a lot of extensions. And we are compatible on the library level and on the user level. Internally, we are doing a lot of changes, enhancements, working both with the community and with customers to do that. And there's lots of patches out there that never went into MySQL, from Google, from Facebook, from others. And we have the last year working on getting those in, and there's still a lot of work, so we hope that by the end of this year we should have all the major patches into it. So and that's the difference with Drizzle. Drizzle doesn't care about backward compatibility. They are looking for what can they do and innovate and do something different. But that also means that if you have a MySQL installation, you can never easily go to Drizzle. It's just too different. And it's also unclear when Drizzle will be stable enough to be used in production. And it's more a kind of a project where you can do much more things. So we have open development model. All our main lists regarding development are on Launchpad. And we're actually working with people. And they have, before we started, there were a couple other forks of MySQL that was not happy with how MySQL was going. Those are people, and those folks are now working on MariaDB, and we expect them to, in the future, be totally dependent on this one and base their changes, if ever needed, on ours. And current state. So we released MariaDB 5.1.42, our first stable release, in February, and as this MySQL 5.1 has been stable a long time, so why did it take us a long time to do a stable release? The major thing with MySQL is that even if the server is open, the build system, documentation, and the infrastructure to do packages is not. So, and it took us a long time to recreate that, and everything we have done is available for free and in different projects. For example, we are using BuildBot for the build system. All the changes we have done is contributed back to BuildBot, and they have accepted it. And all the instructions how to duplicate everything we have done, we have documented, and you can find that on our wiki. So before, MySQL used to say you can work at MySQL anywhere. Now you can work on MySQL anywhere. So we changed kind of that. We also made MariaDB 5.2 out as beta, and that has the changes that we didn't have time to add to 5.1. But basically 5.2 should be relatively stable already because we have taken things that has been into production. Actually, some Google patches are in there production for years, and we expect that should be a stable release within 2-3 months. And one big contrast from us and Oracle is that we actually do say forward-looking statements that we expect to keep. So, what's the difference between 5.1 and MySQL today? We have lots of extra storage engines. We have using XtraDB instead of InnoDB. XtraDB is made by Percona. It's based on the InnoDB plugin, plus Google patches, plus work from Percona. And it basically gives you the performance of the next version of MySQL in a stable release today. And with the stable release, another problem we had with 5.1 was that when we started to put 5.1 into our test systems and running it on many machines, we noticed a lot of random failures in all the test scripts that exist for MySQL. So we spent basically half a year removing all compiler warnings and making all these tests reproducible and ensuring that when the test fails, we know that is actually a bug because we have no random failures anymore. And many of those random failures was actually fatal bugs in MySQL that we have fixed. Some of those we have contributed back to Sun, Oracle. Some of them we have not because Sun and especially Oracle has not been responsive at all when we contribute patches to them. And if they are not going to work with the community, why should the community work with them? So, slow query log, we extended statistics. So we added lots of more information about slow queries, microsecond precision in process lists. So you can exactly, with much higher precision, see how long a query has been running. So we have, actually, this is a nice slide. This shows from where the different features are coming. I will actually go through all of these features in detail. So if you need to know more. So the red are different storage engines that we pull upstreams. And the green parts are things that we got from third parties, from both from Percona and our Delta. Some of those may even come from you. The blue one is developed by us. And then we had pulling a lot of things from MySQL trees that Sun and Oracle has abandoned. The bad thing with what happened lately is that MySQL has been working on 6.0 for 3 years at least, been announced on every conference, it's coming, it's coming. No, it's scrapped, and a lot of the code that is there, including the backup, we never come into MySQL release. As all the full optimizer team is now working for me, they thought that they didn't want to abandon all this work that they spent years on doing. So most of that is backported to a MariaDB version. Most of that is actually in 5.3, but the Threadpool Support and the collations and the Maria storage engines is already in 5.1. We wanted to add as little as to 5.1 as possible, so we would know that as soon as we got all the test systems, everything else stable, we would have a stable release. We haven't got any notable bugs at all since we released this a couple of months ago, so we are feeling quite fine about it. So we're first looking at the XtraDB storage engines. As I said, this is made by Percona, which is one of the biggest support companies, or actually the most active one outside of Oracle. And they've been doing a great job. And most of those people actually coming from MySQL, so they know what they're doing. So the improvements for multi-CPU, I think that most of the patches comes from Google. Some of those actually been developed by Percona, much more diagnostic. There's a way to save the buffers. So if you want to take the MySQL down and have a very, very fast warm start, you can do that. The beta index statistics and a lot of stuff. And then the slow query log. So we took Percona's patches, optimize it to make it notable faster and have to take less code. That's something what we do. So when we take a patch from community, we don't just take and apply it. We actually spend a lot of time to see that how does it fit our infrastructure, how can we optimize it, how can we make it smaller, because many people out there doesn't know the MySQL code very well. And we can usually reduce it to, we can reduce it to 2/3, sometimes half, and get about 50% more performance. And that's something what we do when we work with community. We don't only take patches, we actually optimize it, and when it's in MariaDB, we actually take responsibility of keeping them up to date. So by adding information to the conf file, which is basic option for MySQLD, you can tell exactly what you want to have in the slow query log. And we should have an example about that. So in MySQL, you just you get some limited information about the queries that takes a long time, and in the slide below you can see in red more information about the query. If it was in the query cache, which actually is pretty important if you're using it, and how the join optimizer used the query, because otherwise you don't know that what's the reason for the slowness. And if you want to ever do any debugging, especially for on a place where you don't know anything about, this is extremely useful information. And we also added microprocession, as you can see as the last column here. So you get more information about the query because the normal time is not good enough. And this was added last because we want to be compatible with MySQL. If we would have changed the time to microseconds, that could probably have caused some problems for some people. So we take extreme measures during releases to ensure that we don't do anything that could potentially crash. Of course, when we add more things to the information schemas, there's always a small chance of something. But we also try to add options to have a more compatible mode. So table elimination, this is for the 5.1, the major new feature that we have. It's basically, this was a customer asked this for do because they have a new paradigm in some new software packages that they basically only have one table. They create a view of all tables in the systems and then they just select things from the view, which makes the queries against the database extremely easy because you don't need to know anything about the database. You just select the columns you want. Of course, it's hell for the optimizer, especially with MySQL, because it suddenly has to do a join of 40, 50 tables, which you're actually not using those. And Oracle and SQL Server had an optimization that they automatically detect things like that. This is a table that is not used and removes that from the query. So a customer asked us, can you do that? And we added that. So within Monty Program Ab, we now have 20 employees. We have all the original core developers who knows the MySQL code are now working for us. So we can basically do any changes everywhere. We basically cover all code in the server and most of the storage engines. We don't have that much knowledge about in a DB, but that's why we have a close relationship with Percona to ensure that that's done. And here's lots of 3-4 slides about the table elimination, how it works in more detail. I will just skip those. We only have 45 minutes, and but the slides will be available, so you can see basically here how it works and in which cases it will be able to remove tables. And we are working on extending this even more. So you can, and the main thing is that you can go in many cases down to index-only scan for tables that are not used, that MySQL couldn't do before. And of course, this is only MariaDB, so and we don't expect MySQL to ever pick this up. We know that Drizzle has had some interest in this patch, and we have worked with the Drizzle people so that if they find something interesting in MariaDB, they tell us, and we tell them, here's the code, here's the patch, how it works, we give it to them so they can use it. And we are also monitoring what they are doing, and they are telling us that, hey, this is a really, really cool feature. And as long as it still keeps us on a user level to be compatible with MySQL, then we are looking at including it. So we have a good relationship in working. We are also extending MariaDB to have much more plugins, and that case, in some sense, going in the direction for Drizzle, but backward compatible. But we also are spending much more time to doing interfaces. Personally, I see one of the problems with Drizzle is that they are forcing interfaces or plugins when it doesn't make a sense for the current interface, but they're not changing it because they have many developers, but they don't have many who has great knowledge of all the code and how it works together. So we spend a lot of time to do the interfaces correctly. And of course, when we have done something, we tell Drizzle how we do it. We have done it so they can see that do they want to use their implementation of ours.
Could you just explain, I saw the Maria storage engine on there. Can you clarify the difference between MariaDB and the Maria storage?
I actually have a slide for that. Good. Yeah. So PBXT. How many knows about PBXT here? One. So this is actually one of the problem within the MySQL ecosystem. We have great technology. We are using things like PBXT that has been around for 3 years. It's actually, in some cases, much better than DB, but because MySQL never told anybody out those and pushes put the information out, nobody knows about it. That's also one of the problems we are facing with MariaDB, to tell people that, hey, we exist, we are better, and here's something that you can do to make your application better. So PBXT is a little bit like in a DB in the sense that it's transactional, it has multi-versioning, but the development or the structure, how they do things is totally different in the sense that they only write things sequentially. So if you're running on disks, you get much better performance on inserts, magnitude better than InnoDB can do. And theoretically they will always be able to do the inserts and deletes and updates better. But of course, you then have different performance in other cases. But as far as we've seen, PBXT has a possibility to become a great contender, if not winner, in the race of storage engines for MySQL. And we have a close relationship with those. It's included in MariaDB. So in MariaDB, we take the approach that we want all the storage vendors and developers who has been neglected by MySQL to be included in MariaDB so you can easily use it. And we add storage engines also very late, even in stable or beta releases, as long as the storage engine doesn't change the Maria code at all. Because if you don't use it, it has no impact at all. But if you use it, then you have, of course, are bound by the quality of the engines. And we have extended show engines to show which engines are of which quality. But we need to get technology out and not just keep it away from people. And here's some more information about PBXT. And you can just, almost as fast as I say them, read those. And the interesting thing with PBXT is also that you can do replication now of MySQL through the logs in PBXT, which means that you can have normal overhead for replication goes down to 1/4 or 1/5. So you can get faster replication if you're only using PBXT. And we are looking at see that can we use that in generally for MariaDB to get that faster, to get replication faster for those. And what's the other difference with PBXT? First is that this is community developed. All the roadmaps and everything that's happened is available. You can go to, you can communicate with the developers on the MariaDB developers list. You can, of course, you can contact them directly also. And so you know what happened and you can work with them. And if there's a bug, you know when and if it will be fixed because they will tell you. It's not like a black hole that has been in the DB for years. They have also done a lot of study of SSDs, and they are optimizing it for that. Some of the upcoming features are in-memory tables because the design is very suitable to also keep things in memory, and the PBXT guys are looking at the backup that Oracle has disabandoned in 6.0, and as far as we know, will never happen in any community version of MySQL. We are looking at working on to ensure that that will happen in MariaDB. That was something that come out from the MySQL conference lately, where as far as I know, nobody of you have attended. So the Maria storage engine. This actually has been a great source of confusion, because when I went out from Sun almost 1 year, 2 months ago, we were working internally on this Maria storage engine that was meant to replace InnoDB. And when I went out from Sun, I took some of the MariaDB team with me, and we thought that, okay, we will go out, we will work with Sun to ensure that there will always be an InnoDB replacement. And then a couple of months later, Oracle suddenly bought Sun, and the reason for doing MariaDB was not as important as before. We're still gonna complete it, but now we see it's much more important to ensure that there is a free version of MySQL than a free version of InnoDB. And that's why our development the last year has been almost 100% on MariaDB. And then we kind of got into the confusion that when we thought that, okay, we need to change the name of MySQL because we don't want to conflict the Oracle's trademark. And then we thought MariaDB kind of is the logical name because we are working on the Maria storage engines for years. But of course, people was confused. So what is Maria? Is it the engine or the server? And that's why we launched at the user conference a contest to rename the engine to something different, and we will announce that as soon as we have looked at the results when we come home from here. Whenever we are able to fly out from US, that's a different issue. So with Maria, the engine, we have it's a crash-safe MyISAM, so that we do replay things on a crash. It's based on MyISAM code with a lot of work and development, and we are very close to adding transactions. And normally we would have completed it a long time ago, but because of the focus for MariaDB, we haven't. But we did add group commit to get a much higher speed for it. And we use it internally for temporary tables when the heap tables is not big enough, because normally in MySQL, if the heap tables for temporary heap gets too big, we switch to MyISAM table. But the problem with MyISAM tables is that all the records are always stored on disk, and for each record fetch, we actually do a disk read. Operating system will of course cache that. So with the Maria storage engine, we actually cache the records in memory. So this, in practice, this means that MariaDB should be faster than MySQL for any complex queries when we actually have to hit disk. in normal cases. So the thread pooling support, this was something that we did for our customers. I did for our customers 4 years ago. It was added to 6.0, but I wanted to have it in 5.1, but back 4 years ago they said that 5.1 will be out in a couple of months, so we can't do anything with it. Of course, it took 3 years almost to get 5.1 out after that, and I always thought it was a shame that we never got this nice feature in. So this was one of the first things that I backported to MariaDB from 6.0. So normally you have one process per thread, one thread per connection in MySQL, and that works reasonably well. But if you want to have a couple 100,000 connections to MySQL, it doesn't work. Or you also had a problem if you have lots of running queries at the same time, you get a lot of context switches, which is not good. So the idea with this one is say that you tell how many threads you want to have running the queries at the same time. And then we take one query at a time, and when we have n threads running, we don't take more queries until one of those are finished. And that worked very good for the customer. The problem was that if you have 10 running queries and you have put this up to 10, you can't anymore log into the MySQL server and see what's happening because all your threads are occupied. And I fixed that by allowing you to use both models at the same time. So you can have, depending on the port or how you connect, you can either say that does this connection use the thread pool or the one thread per connection. So you get the best of both worlds. So I would say that if you have, you know that you have a lot of short running, selects running, at the same time you put those into thread pool and statistics queries, and then you have something that you need to know, this has to be executed. You just put them into one thread per connection. We had a new collation. So what's the big deal with the collation? The thing was that the creation collation is actually pretty different from all the other collations in MySQL, and they were only support in upcoming 5.5 or 6.0 for this one. So, and we got connected on the IRC by some people in Crazy, said that they are going to decide here on university or government level, I don't remember just now, that which database we should use. And there's no free database that supports the creation collation, so if you don't get a solution for this in some weeks, they probably has to go to Oracle or some other database, commercial database, just for the whole infrastructure of Croatia. And the one thing that was missing was this one. So we implement this in about 3 days for them, and they were happy. So that's kind of how we try to work with the community. If somebody is in crisis, we help. And that was, and we did get some help from people at that time within Sun to get this done. But they couldn't add that into the 5.1 because they have strict rules for what can be done in a stable release. This is perfectly safe, but it just doesn't work. It has always been hard, not always, but the last 8 years have been incredibly hard to get any changes done in MySQL. And that was one of the reasons Drizzle was created. Brian Aker was so fed up that he couldn't get his own changes that he deemed critical into the MySQL server just because some manager told him that, hey, we will do a release soon, you can't do anything. Even everybody didn't know that the release is 0 years away. And that was why Drizzle was created. A frustration for getting anything done. We are fixing that. We don't want anybody to be frustrated. If you give us a patch, there's always a MariaDB version where we can add the patch, if it makes sense for the larger community. So we have no, 5.1 is closed, so there we can only do bug fixes. 5.2 is in beta, we can do a little more flexibility to there, but not new features. But if we notice that that something is missing for making this feature useful, we can still do it. And everything else goes into 5.3. Of course, we only add stable features to a tree. So the FederatedX, this is from Patrick Galbraith. He was the one who wrote the original federated engine in MySQL. A federated engine allows you from one MySQL server connect to another server and fetch informations. And when he quit MySQL, MySQL stopped all development of federated, and when people, paying customer reported bugs, MySQL said, oh, this is not a supported feature anymore, even if the customer had depended on it. And instead of working with Patrick Galbraith, they actually wanted to work with Sun. They just deprecated the engine. And that, we know that there was lots of customer users depending on it. So we actually have worked with Patrick, taking in the newest version that he has been keeping up to date, putting into MariaDB, put it into the test system, helped him actually to fix some issues with it. And that's just a better federated engine that exists in the MySQL server. So, 10 minutes. Okay, I always take a great pride in working with people and not and users and community, and ensure that their needs are satisfied. I really hate the fact when you say something is deprecated just for your own convenience when you know that other people are using it. That's also one of the reasons I'm working on MariaDB. I would hate that all this 20 years and more I spent on the server would be just wasted because Oracle would close up development. And I don't want that to happen. I feel bad about everybody, every single person who is using MySQL, depending on it, and suddenly couldn't use it anymore. That's why we are doing this. And the other people in my team feel the same. We want to contribute. We want to make people happy. That's why we work on open source. So, compatibility. We are dropping replacement. Libraries are 100% the same. You can connect with the MySQL library to MariaDB, vice versa. It just works. And we have people just on IRC just said they tried it, no issues. Of course, you get more features with us, so there's not necessary that you can go back easily without a dump, of course. If you use the Croatian collation or if you use PBXT, you have to do a dump back. But we are basically the big brother of MySQL, and we are ensuring we are compatible. So for each release we do, we pull in the latest changes for MySQL, test those in a beta test system that MySQL has. Usually we have to fix a lot of things, and then we do a release. And MySQL MariaDB 5.1 is compatible with MySQL 5.1. Whenever MySQL 5.5 is released, we will take the latest MariaDB version and make that compatible with 5.5. So we will always be ahead. And the closed source features that Oracle is now developing, we will do our best to try to replicate those in MariaDB. So infrastructure, already told about that no, the infrastructure is free. We have removed mutex set, we have better test suite, we have removed compiler warnings. So my belief is that MariaDB is a stable version of MySQL. We know that there's fatal bugs that they haven't fixed, and we know that we have a stable test system that MySQL doesn't have. So in 5.2, we had virtual columns, user stats version 2. That's basically index and table statistics that you should already know in Google. I think you have those in your build. We have a partitioner key cache. That basically, one of the biggest problems with MyISM from a performance point of view is that we have a global mutex on the key cache. That actually has stopped us for performing in a heavy multi-core environment good. That's now fixed. And we are adding new engines from the community to it. Let's see. So this is basically the virtual columns patch where you can basically have a column that is calculated. You can even, if you index it, we actually will materialize it, but you will not have to maintain it itself. So it's you can do it the same thing with trigger. This is just much more elegant, and if it's not materialized, it's faster and easier. And what will happen beyond 5.2? We have our development team, the optimizer team especially, had backported a lot of the work in the optimizer they have worked the last 3 years on. So the MySQL 5.3, the work is almost complete. We have not only backported, we have greatly enhanced it. And but how the optimizer team says it, basically we have taken a 5-year leap forwards in how the optimizer works in MySQL. So in 5.3, subqueries are performant, joins are better, we see improvements of 10 to 100 times for more complex queries. And we should, the guys actually wanted us to do a beta on the user conference. But the thing is that we already just made 5.2 beta a couple of weeks ago. We can't really have 2 betas. So 5.3 is almost ready, but we will keep it up for a couple of months to see that other additional features like dynamic columns, so you can have different rows, can have different number of columns. We also add heap tables with varchar and blob support. We want that to get that into 5.3, and then after the summer we will basically do a beta. And we will have a phone home feature, which basically you can opt, it will be turned off by default, but you can basically turn it on so we can get statistics of MariaDB uses, specifically which feature are you use. Because one of the biggest problems in developing database is to know what features are people using, where should we put resources. So we really want to know what people are using in production, so we know that, oh, PBXT is heavily used, then we can add more resources for that one. And of course, all the statistics we collect, we will have them publicly available, but of course not so you can track individuals. We will basically also match things so we can even track those. But we want to show people how MariaDB and in some sense MySQL is used. And we are working with community, so there's still room for things in 5.3. If people work with us, you can still get it in, otherwise it gets in 5.4. And if you notice, we are doing 3 releases this year. We expect that very soon we will do 1 release basically a year. But there's just so much interest in getting things in that we are overwhelmed with good patches, and we want to have these patches out as soon as possible. So that was almost 10 minutes. So questions? Yes?
Are you going to support the embedded server library with the MySQL team?
It's part of our test suite, and so that means that for each push we do a full test on, I think, 17 platforms. We hope to expand those to 20, 30 over time, and embedded is part of it. So it's supported. Oh, sorry. The question was, will we support the embedded server? And actually, the embedded server is something that has been greatly forgotten within MySQL, and I think it's a great piece of work, and it's just sad that it's not as used, because it can give you 2 times improvements or 10 times improvements if you have short queries by embedding things into your server. Yes?
What is the largest database that people have used MariaDB or MySQL for?
I mean, we did a release. The question was, what's the largest database that we know of that is in use of MariaDB? We just released it, and as in MySQL, we don't require people to register or download. So we don't know. We only know that lots of people have downloaded, some 20, 30,000, and we haven't got a single complaint. Okay, we got 1 complaint, but that was something we fixed in a couple of minutes. But
So my question is, some users with large database, they do some sharding on outside of MySQL. That means they create multiple instances
Yep.
In the same table, they divide into those servers. Is there any effort to move that complexity at MariaDB level itself so that from application point of view, you just deal with one database even though internally it may be broken up into.
So in 5.1, MySQL introduced partitioning. Of course, we are based on 5.1, so we have that too. They have added some more extensions to that in 5.5. And when 5.5 hits RC, we will also have that in MariaDB. The problem with that is that it's not really taken care of at the optimizer level, especially there is no work going on, as far as I know, that you can do parallel query on the different partitionings. But it's more a question that if you have a query that where you use the partition as a key, we can find the correct partition. But there's not much work on doing that within MariaDB itself. On the other hand, we are working with storage engines like CalPoint and ScaleDB that does that on the storage engine level automatically. And they claim that they have tremendous performance improvements for doing that. So I mean, we are trying to handle the upper level and let the storage engine handle the lower level. That's much better than adding partition on the upper level. Yep.
About 3 years ago, like say 10 years ago, MySQL mostly did not support transactions, and it was a design decision in that there was a whole chapter in the documentation that defended that transactions were not really that needed, and then you did like a 180 degrees turn and started supporting transactions. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts of this entire dilemma.
So if you look at what was originally said in the... Okay, sorry. The question was that originally in the manual 10 years ago, we had a big statement that that we don't have transactions, and you don't need them, and then somebody can say that we did a 180 degrees turn. If you go and look at the old documentation, we said that for many applications, you can overcome transactions. You don't need them in many applications. And atomic operations is enough. With atomic operations, basically means that if you get a crash, you don't lose data. It's still atomic. MySQL didn't have atomic transaction, but we were then already planning to do a crash-safe MyISAM. So basically have an internal transaction, but you can't basically use commit. So the big argument back then was, do you really need rollback as a command in your applications? And I never had to use rollback ever as a command to rolling back, because if you code your things properly, you can avoid rollbacks. But of course, we also try and position and explain where we are usable. We also said that, of course, there are things that require transactions. There was just a question about what's the importance of transactions. And Heikki Tuuri, the author of InnoDB, came to me, that was about 10 years ago, and said that, hey, I have a great transactional database. Do you want to have it? I said, of course we want to have it. Because with MySQL, we can only satisfy maybe 70% of the needs back then. The transactions, we can support 95% of the needs. So just question about where do you go and where you want to do, what do you want to do. There's still a lot of people who are using MyISAM and only MyISAM just because it satisfies the needs and the extra performance they get from it. It's worth it. But of course, then you have to see that what can you afford to lose. If you can't afford to lose anything, then you have to either use atomic operations, like Maria no support today. It doesn't have transactions, but it's atomic, so you never lose anything. That's automatic rollback, but it's not transactions. And many of the non-SQL databases, they don't have transactions. They have because you can't combine things into many instances. But they do have many of those atomic. So you don't get the half thing written somewhere. So that when you get a crash, your database is destroyed. More things. So In that case, if you have questions, our development is totally open. You can find all developers on the Maria channel at Freenode. We don't have any internal channels, so you can see what we are discussing there. All our communication regarding development is on the Maria developers list on Launchpad. You can participate. We are doing things what you would expect from an open source project. To be able to commit, you need to show that you are clever enough, you will not cause any bugs, and you can understand that you need to do reviews before you commit. But we do have committers outside of our company doing commits to MariaDB. We expect that to be bigger, but we want to ensure that everything is properly reviewed before it's pushed. But then we have an active developers list where people who are more unsure can just post a patch and ask to be included, and if it makes sense, we include it. If not, we tell why, and then we discuss and work. So that's what you expect from open source project, and we are working 100% like that. So MariaDB is not a project of Monty Program Ab. We are just the driver and enabler of it. Anybody can participate. Anybody can become a driver. We are open. So, thank you.